On your Friday episode of Locked On Blue Jays, the Toronto Blue Jays pick up their first win in the Sean and Mike era of Locked On Blue Jays. We will dig into Chris Bassitt being a boss and hitting 200 innings. We'll also dig into Brandon Belt, who had a nice game, and look ahead to the final weekend of the season, all coming up today. Thanks for hanging.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Blue Jays, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Friday, September the 29th, and I am one of your hosts, Sean Woodley. I'm the host of Locked On Raptors and a lifelong afflicted Blue Jays fan, joined by Mike DiStefano, a fellow Blue Jays fan and the co-host of Locked On Leafs. Here, as we get set to detail the final game against the Yankees, a 6-0 victory. Very nice, very tidy. Everything's back in normal and feels very good. And we'll look ahead to the final weekend of the season, a series against a Rays team that is not playing for a damn thing, with the Orioles locking up the AL East last night. Before we dive all into it, a reminder, you can find the show for free wherever you get your podcasts and support it. You can go to YouTube, find the video version every day, and support there as well. And of course, tomorrow is the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation here in Canada. In the link, or in the description of this podcast, there's a link to the Downey Wenjack Fund for survivors of residential schools. Please, if you are so inclined, throw a little money towards a wonderful, wonderful cause on a day that is very important for all of us to sit and reflect a little bit. So thanks in advance for doing that and supporting a wonderful cause in the Downey Wenjack Fund. All right, Mike DiStefano, how's it going, buddy? The Blue Jays pick up a win, their first win in the Mike and Sean era. Of course, as we've said, the curse is over. I know everyone was very concerned, and now their magic number is down to 2 with the Mariners winning last night. It makes things a little more hairy going into the final weekend, of course, but things are looking pretty good here for your Toronto Blue Jays to get to the postseason, as we all hope that they will. Let's start off with the game last night, the 6-0 victory over the Yankees, to close things out and talk about Chris Bassitt, shall we? He's the big takeaway. He was incredible. 7 2/3, 12 strikeouts, completely shuts down a Yankees lineup that was giving the Jays some trouble in the previous 2 games, in particular on Wednesday night. Aaron Judge, no homers to speak of. What a wonderful, wonderful reprieve from the Aaron Judge run of dominance this season in Toronto. I believe going into last night, he had 6 dongs in 5 games. That's great. Love it. It's just makes me feel so great. But what were your takeaways from Chris Bassitt's outstanding performance last night, Mike?
Yeah, he was phenomenal last night. He was, hitting his spots all over the plate. You look at Aaron Judge, right? A couple of times catching him swinging. I think he struck him out twice, which is nice to see. The first one was nice. Ran a ball in tight and kind of made him look silly almost in the first inning there. It was funny to watch. But look, Chris Bassitt, like it's impressive. Like in the year of 2023, you don't see many guys who are able to go 200 innings in a game or in a season, and Chris Bassitt's been able to do that this year for the Blue Jays. And it's just a testament to how consistent, how reliable, and how deep he's been able to go. And John Schneider was asked about how big of an accomplishment that is after the game. In this time of baseball where bullpens are so heavily relied upon, and you just don't see guys going 7, 8, 9 innings anymore in ball games. And that's exactly what he said. He said it's very impressive, and it's just a testament to how hard that guy was working all season long, and how good he was. The fact that they never had to go to the bullpen early in games to help this guy. He was always consistent, and he always went out there and put on a good show. And last night, maybe the best of the season. The guy was outstanding. 7 2/3, and maybe it could have gone a little bit longer. They let him kind of go after clinching the 200th inning to let him get that little walk-off send-off by the Jays faithful who went down to the game last night, which I thought was pretty cool. But like 12 Ks in 7 2/3 is pretty good stuff against that Yankees lineup. So yeah, I thought that Bassitt was unbelievable, and definitely, it's his final start of the season. saved his best for last, perhaps, and maybe even put himself into that conversation we were talking about a little bit yesterday. It was going to be a little bit of a discussion, probably either him or Barrios, who gets that start, in game 2, maybe game 1. If
Assuming Gausman doesn't have to pitch in a do or die on Sunday,
right.
which let's hope it doesn't come to that, please.
So I think that Bassitt probably has earned that job over Barrios. Like, ultimately, I know it's something that we had discussed on the podcast yesterday in our co-sign, no sign, and we were a little bit on the fence, and maybe it is recency bias a little bit. But, I was listening to a Sports Center hit yesterday from Scott Mitchell of TSN, and he was mentioning if you take out 3 starts from Bassitt this year where he allowed 7-8, and I think maybe allowed another 8-run game at some point this season, you take those 3 starts out, it's got like a 2.66 ERA. Like, outside of those 3 starts, he's been lights out dominant. And last night was another one of those games. And he's someone who you can certainly rely on, giving him the ball come playoff time. And they put up runs for this guy. I don't know what it is.
It was glorious.
When he's pitching, they decide to give us offense last night. It's exactly what they did. They had 6 runs on the board, a couple of early runs, and then they stacked upon that throughout the game. So a terrific night for Chris Bassitt and the Blue Jays bats all around.
I was a little fearful at the start of this game. What was it, the 3rd inning maybe, where they had bases loaded and Vlad strikes out and they only get the 1 run out of the inning, which was the Dalton Varsho homer to lead it off. You get the George Springer double. They get the bases loaded. They get nothing out of it against Luke Weaver of all people. And I'm just sitting there like, uh-oh. There's problems. These are problems again that are arising at the very worst time. But no, they figured it out. They got the 6 runs on the board, got a few homers. That was great. And Chris Bassitt, I mean, just to kind of finish off the point on him, a total delight to watch. Just like such a fun pitcher, such an engaging pitcher to watch. The craft of it all, the changing speeds, the movement, the location, all of it's just really like my exact favorite type of pitcher. I'm like a dyed-in-the-wool Marco Estrada head from back in the day. Like, I don't need someone throwing gas. Just give me dudes who have really good junk to throw out there and a great sort of grasp of how to deploy said junk in a way that leaves opposing batters flailing about hopelessly. It's beautiful stuff. Chris Bassitt was awesome. And I think, I know it's taboo to be like, hey, the front office doing a good job. But look, if you look back at the history of their free agent signings since kind of moving into this era of win now, they've kind of nailed every single one. And I think you thought back probably like 2019. It was like, okay, how are they going to build this team out, right? You got all these wonderful up-and-coming position player prospects, but the pitching is a grim scene. And the thought there, I think, was always, you know what? It's easier and less volatile to develop position players. And you can always pay for pitching. You can always throw money at the problem with pitching. And they've very much thrown money at the problem with pitching, right? Kevin Gausman, free agent signing, absolutely home run. Like the 3rd most valuable pitcher in baseball per Fangraphs board this season. Amazing. Chris Bassitt, obviously this season, his first season in Toronto, top 20 in starters ERA among all players across the league. Like, he's just been really, really lights out. I think he's like 31st in pitcher WAR per Fangraphs as well. The lack of strikeouts hurts him in that metric a little bit, but you think back to Hyunjin Ryu. Yes, he had Tommy John. Yes, there were some down spells there, but over the course of his 4-year contract, I think you'd absolutely say he was worth that 4-year, $80 million contract he got as sort of the first big signing of this window. You got Jose Barrios. Yes, last year was a nightmare, but he's rebounded and kind of is back to his regular, consistent self this season. That seems like it was a good example of throwing money at your pitching situation. And even like Yusei Kikuchi, you bring him in, and he's been a revelation as your 4th starter. Like, you can look at the position players. You can say George Springer maybe hasn't been all it was cracked up to be, but there's also other moves like Brandon Belt, who's been an absolute home run, which we're going to talk about in just a second. I think the Jays front office deserves some credit for properly identifying really good targets on the free agent market and getting them in the door. And it's not an easy thing to do. A lot of teams go out there and pay for 30-plus-year-old pitching or guys in the back half of their careers, and those big, long contracts look like absolute albatrosses. Think David Price, Chris Sale, guys like that. The Jays have avoided those huge downside deals, and I think they deserve some credit for identifying the right guys to throw money at later in their careers. Obviously, Pete Walker deserves a lot of credit. He's very good at what he does, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, that's kind of my defending the honor of the front office that no one asked for here to start off your show. Awesome season for Chris Bassitt. Obviously, not Kevin Gausman as far as value given to the team, but I think a pretty clear number 2 as far as dudes you trusted going out there, and no problem at all if he's going to go and start in game 2 of the playoffs. Again, assuming we don't have to see Gausman go out there on Sunday in a do or die. Please no.
He's in a good spot. Yeah. Whatever, whoever they throw out there, 1, 2, 3, Gausman, Bassitt, Barrios, there's trust there, and that's all you can ask for when it comes to the rotation in the playoffs. Is, do I trust this guy to get me 5, maybe 6 innings? And for all 3 of those guys, you definitely do. And with the strength of the bullpen, I think that the Jays are in a pretty good spot if they can get the offense to go along with it. Obviously, 1-2 losses aren't pretty. So they got to get some bats going. But when it comes to the pitching, I think they got that covered come playoff time.
Thing is, they don't need much offense for it to work. It's a pretty well-moving, well-oiled machine when things are rolling, and they just get like a little bit of offensive help. We'll come back on the other side and get into the offense as it got going again last night after 2 off nights against Michael King and Garrett Cole. Luke Weaver, Michael King and Garrett Cole, he is not. We'll get into the lineup change. Brandon Belt batting second, whether that's something that should stick. Of course, he hit a dong last night too. We'll get into all that coming up in just a sec here on Locked On Blue Jays. But first, today's show is brought to you by Sleeper. The MLB playoffs are around the corner, which means the clock is ticking on your chance to 100 times your cash on daily fantasy baseball. Baseball has never been more exciting than it is now, with studs like Acuna, Betts, and Brandon Belt working out there. So go pick more or less on stats for these stars like home runs, hits, strikeouts, and more for up to 100 times payout on Sleeper. Get your picks right, and you could win big. Of course, it's the last weekend of the season. Guys chasing milestones. Maybe you want to go and look at Yusei Kikuchi tonight, it's Kikuchi tonight, correct? He's going to get more or less strikeouts than he's projected for. Maybe it's clinch day. Maybe you want to have a sleeper entry in for clinch day just so you remember it fondly. Either way, go right now and use the promo code LOCKEDON and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and go check out Sleeper now. All right, let's continue on here. Mike digging into the batting lineup change. Of course, that was the big news out of yesterday. Everyone loves batting lineup talk. It's just the only thing anyone can ever get excited for, of course. Does it actually mean that guys hit better when they hit in different spots? Probably not, but it happened last night. Brandon Belt bats second in the order, bumping Vlad bats third, continues to bat third. Bo Bichette bumps down to fourth. Matt Chapman drops down to eighth in the lineup. Kiermaier up a little bit. Kirk bats sixth. And, of course, Belt with the home run and just sort of a continuation of his excellent season when he's been available, when he's been on the field. We saw the lineup kind of get into gear last night. Very exciting to see. Any big takeaways from the lineup? Again, it's a one-game thing. Lineup machinations are almost like my least favorite thing to think about when I think about baseball because I don't know if it matters all that much. Put the good players up high and have a guy who can mash in fourth and you're fine is basically my kind of philosophy on batting orders. But did you notice a tangible change out there in the approach and the way guys were settled into the plate? Obviously, Brandon Belt statistically has been their best hitter this season, so it makes sense that he's batting second. Where are you at with the change and thoughts on Belt and his big game? And it's really nice to have that dude back.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And yes, he's been one of their better hitters, most consistent hitters, since really he had an early funk like the first 6 weeks of the season. Since then, he's been great. But he also, not to mention that he's just been good all around, but he's been the most successful hitter against Luke Weaver. He actually had a 400 average coming into the game against Luke Weaver. He had seen him a dozen or 15 at bats against him over the course of his career. So, he's actually someone who'd had success. So there was some, foresight there thinking, okay, Brandon Belt knows this guy. Let's get him up to the plate so we can, somebody who knows what he's looking for when it comes to this pitcher specifically. Hopefully he can get on base. And then once you get on base, I think the thought process of having Bo in the 4-hole is Bo's been able to get hits. So
Yeah.
guys getting on base, he should be able to bring them in, right? Like that's something that I think was part of the thought process there was let's just get guys like George Springer, who's been better at getting on base lately. Obviously, you're going to get something from Brandon Belt. You were hoping, and then you're not going to move Vlad outside of your top four. I mean, as much as his struggles are documented this season, he's still not a guy you're going to bat eighth in the lineup. It's just not going to happen. So I think it makes sense. You look at the top four here, it really, really does. Moving Matt Chapman down, like we talked about his struggles yesterday, and I know he had a home run last night, so that's awesome to see. Maybe that sparks something out of Matt Chapman going forward and into the postseason. Wouldn't it be something if they got something out of that guy's bat? But dropping him to eighth also makes sense. Like when you're batting 200, you don't deserve to sit there fifth, sixth with guys up at the plate and you're sitting there and you're striking out, right? Like it's not what you want to see from this Jays lineup. So moving him down into a less vulnerable position for Toronto makes some sense. And Kirky's been a little bit better as of late too at the bat, so moving him up. I thought that it was actually a good call, good timing. A lot of it made sense and it worked out. So when it works, you're always going to say, hey,
John Schneider, absolute genius. Yes.
Genius. Absolute genius. Why didn't you do this earlier, buds? But honestly, yeah, I would imagine that it'll stick this way for tonight's game against the Rays, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, why fix what ain't broke? And again, I think like just the statistical case for Brandon Belt batting second makes the most sense. He has the highest OBP of any Jays regular. He's the highest OPS plus of any Jays regular. He gets on base, he hits, he can, drive in Springer if Springer's going to do his leadoff magic thing, hit doubles, stuff like that. Like there's no reason I think right now not to have Belt in there. As great as Bo Bichette is, Bo's almost a little insurance for those kind of hairy Vlad at bats, right? Like you get Belt and Springer on, Vlad has his struggles, Bo's still there to kind of clean up the mess if in fact there's a mess to clean up. And that's, again, I feel like we've been so hard on Vlad too, right? Like it makes sense. He's really good, in theory, and you want him to be the best hitter on this team. And frankly, if Vlad were the best hitter on this team this season, we're probably not talking about any of the major concerns we've been talking about all season long. As he goes, the Blue Jays really go. Same with Springer. And, I think just the way they've kind of lined it up here, I think it makes a lot of sense. I still, not moving Vlad down. What are we talking about here, right? Like he's Vlad. And so, yeah, good move there, I think. And I would be more than all right to see that lineup going forward. Deployed this way, I think
making sure that that they're facing a righty on the mound, because it would be different, I guess, if the lefty was on the mound. But yeah,
it's Anthony Savali, tonight.
Who's a righty, so they are going to be facing a right-handed pitcher. So you'd assume that you'll keep Belt in the lineup and you'll keep the same guys in there and have some lefties throughout. So I think for sure tonight we should see the same lineup.
100%. I think with this weekend now too, I think you're kind of looking at Matt Chapman and Dalton Varsho. Really nice to see them get off the schneid last night with a couple dongs. Varshaw's had a weird season, right? Like I feel like he has like massive moments, and like really when he does kind of line into one, it's like, oh, okay, this guy rocks again. It's obviously not been there with the bat. The defense is like next level, incredible. It's gold glove level defense as always with him. So you're not going to have Chapman or Varsho out of the lineup. But if you have those two dudes batting eighth and ninth, like there is potential to have that sort of turn the lineup over thing, right? Where those guys, if they can kind of catch fire here, like having that power, having that pop it that those guys bring, that's not a bad thing to have at the bottom of your order. I have no problem with kind of having those guys 8 and 9 right now. You're not going to take Chapman out of the lineup because his defense is too valuable. The same applies for Varsho when he's in there. Obviously, lefties, it's a bit of a different story, although Varsho's had some nice success against lefties of late, if I recall. But yeah, I think that's kind of it on the lineup. Good to see them get back rolling. 13 hits. Everyone kind of getting in on the action last night outside of Kevin Kiermaier. Everyone with a hit. You got Bichette, Biggio, Kirk, and Springer all with multiple hits. That's great to see. And, maybe that little blip against Michael King and Garrett Cole was exactly that. We've seen the offense come around a little bit more of late. Maybe that's the exception and not the rule. Again, it's all so hard to sort of decipher, and everything's magnified in this final week of the season. But, sometimes you get Garrett cold. Maybe this is more in line with what we can expect for the Jays going into the final weekend of the season and the playoffs. We'll come back on the other side, and we'll get into the final weekend of the season against the Tampa Bay Rays, who, again, are playing for nothing. And we will talk about, is there any sort of chicanery going on? They're playing the Rays. Can they find a way to, maneuver themselves around the wild card while also still making the playoffs? Does it matter who they play in the playoffs? We'll get into all that coming up in just a second. But first, got to tell you about DoorDash. Mike, I don't know about you. When I'm watching a game and I realize I want a snack, I don't want to have to get up and go to the store and get a snack. Yeah. Instead, DoorDash grocery delivery is the way to do that. You can get what you want right when you need it. You've trusted DoorDash to deliver your restaurant favorites, and now you can get grocery delivery that actually delivers too. With thousands of grocery stores to choose from, you'll find the best in your neighborhood and boost your local economy with each and every order as well. Want even more value? You can save on all your grocery and restaurant favorites with a $0 delivery fee on all eligible orders with a Dash Pass membership with easy substitutions right in the app and best-in-class customer support. DoorDash delivers groceries exactly how you want it. Get 50% off your first DoorDash order up to a $20 value when you use the code LOCKEDONMLB at checkout. Limited time offer. Terms apply. That's 50% off up to $20 with no minimum subtotal and zero delivery fees on your first order when you download the DoorDash app in the App Store and enter the code LOCKEDONMLB. Don't forget, that's the code LOCKEDONMLB for 50% off your first order with DoorDash. All right, Mike, let's round this bad boy out. The weekend lies ahead. Jays, Rays, 3 games to go. 2 is the magic number for your Toronto Blue Jays. Of course, the Mariners are in action against the Rangers. You don't want to have to get any tiebreaker implications. I believe the only tiebreaker the Jays actually win is in the event of a 3-way tie with Seattle and Houston. That's the only tiebreaker they win. So you don't want to mess around with any of that stuff. Just get 2 wins or win tonight and hope that the Mariners lose, I suppose.
Well, they should have lost last night. The Mariners, I mean, Aroldis Chapman, still a J killer to this day. Still a J killer.
Boy, he stinks for a lot of reasons. So, Mike, of course, the biggest hope for this weekend is to survive and make it into the playoffs starting next week. That's what we all want. Do you have any sort of things you're keeping an eye on this weekend against Tampa? Any things you're hoping for? Again, Tampa, as injured as they already are, they're probably going to be resting even more dudes because of the lack of anything to play for them.
Yeah.
With those damn Orioles locking up the division. But yeah, where are you at with sort of things you're keeping an eye on this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, the playing spoiler for a division foe, I guess, is always something to play for a little bit. So you do got to keep that in mind that they're still going to want to win some games here down the stretch and make sure that they're going in the right direction heading into the postseason. But I think that we just need to continue to see the bats at play here. I mean, we can't see any more Michael King or Garrett Cole moments the rest of the way. That's just not good for my health. Not good for the confidence of the team. But I was just looking, like, we got Yusei Kikuchi hitting up the mound tonight, and you look at his stats at Rogers Center against these Tampa Bay Rays, and he's been lights out. He's 3-0, 19 innings through those games. He's given up just 12 hits, just 3 earned runs through 19 innings, only 5 walks, 23 strikeouts, a 142 ERA, and a .89 whip. So he's been dominant against this Rays team when he's home on the mound at Rogers Center. So hopefully he can keep that up tonight because they obviously need to pick up a win, right? They got to pick up, if not 1, certainly 2 wins over this weekend. If they can get the first one here tonight, then I think that would certainly go a long ways to them booking the spot in the postseason. So I'm looking for Kikuchi to continue to dance out there on the Rogers Center mound against these Rays.
Yeah, it's I feel it's weird because it's technically potentially a clinch day. Normally there's lots of excitement and hopefulness on clinch day, but I feel still uneasy about it all, even though I know the odds suggest it's going to be fine. Well, if they win tonight and the Mariners lose, then they won't get to celebrate on the field for having clinched, but if they win tonight, Mariners lose, that's your magic number 2, done. It can happen tonight. And so I wish I felt more excited about it, but I feel like the fact that you're waiting for that Mariners game to wrap is part of the issue here. You're not going to get to celebrate in real time at the end of the game if they win. But it'd be really nice to just get that sorted out, taken care of this evening, and not have to worry about it the rest of the weekend. They still have no projected starters for either the Rays or Jays for Saturday or Sunday, which is understandable considering tonight could very much dictate what the Jays got to do for the rest of the weekend. I would assume we'll probably see Hyunjin Ryu on Saturday anyway. I don't think he's going to be much in the playoff rotation plans necessarily. But then you really hope you don't have to put Gausman in on Friday, or on Sunday, that is. That's like threat level midnight, I suppose, if that ends up hitting that spot. But let me ask you, worst case scenario, it comes down to a do or die game on Sunday where they have to win. I feel like with Gausman on the bump, you'd feel pretty good about winning that game. Obviously, anything can happen in a one-game sample, and Gausman hasn't exactly gotten the run support this season when he's been out there just completely dominating dudes. But in the event they have to roll Gausman out Sunday and they win that game, how good do you feel about a Yusei Kikuchi start in a Game 3 situation? How much does that change how you approach your playoff rotation? I mean, I suppose that by the end of that, would Game 3 be on Thursday of the wild card round?
Yeah,
I believe it would be. Yeah,
and if it is, like, do you
put Gausman on 3 days rest?
Well, he's not on 3 days. Well,
if it's Sunday, if he pitches Sunday, no, it'll be the third
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Yeah, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is games 1, 2, and 3 because it's all in one spot, right? There's no travel day. So, do you like Yusei Kikuchi in Game 3 or Kevin Gausman on 3 days rest? What do you think?
Maybe it depends how.
We're just preparing everybody for worst case scenarios here, just so you're all prepared for things that could go wrong.
probably Gauss. Like, we see this all the time where pitchers do pitch on short rest of the playoffs, whether it's 3 days. And maybe it's a piggyback type of thing. Like, they throw Gausman out there for 4 innings and they throw Kikuchi out there for 3 innings, and you kind of muster up, a solid rotation that way, right? A good game out of that. So you don't get a full start out of Gausman, but you get him, through the 4 innings. You get Kikuchi. Hopefully he can go through the lineup effectively. And then from there, you rely on your bullpen to close it out and finish it up. Maybe that would be the route that we could see the Blue Jays go if it did get to a Game 3, and if that's what ends up happening. I could see that being the case, perhaps like a little bit of a piggyback type game.
Yeah, I mean, it's not what you want if that's how it all goes down. I would almost wonder if you change up your plan. I guess Kikuchi going on Friday would make him available for Wednesday. So
I think like legitimately, I don't think we get to this point because
I'm just I don't think we do either. I'm just preparing everybody for the instance in which that takes place.
But that would mean that the Jays basically have been swept throughout the final 3 games, and the Mariners won all 3 of their final games. Right? That's essentially what would have to happen for that to really take place. Because the second the Jays win a game and then the Mariners lose a game from here on out, that's it. They're in the playoffs, right? Yeah. So unless both sides end up with a sweep that negatively impacts Toronto, that should not really be the case, I suppose. Unless, of course, they lose the first 2 and then have to win that final one on Sunday, of course. But let's hope that Kikuchi can get the job done tonight, and then that's not as big of a worry come Sunday.
Yeah, last question for you, Mike. We've been kind of kicking this around a little bit the last couple days, but I'm curious, where do you come down on as far as hopes for this weekend? Who do you want to see the Jays play if they make the playoffs? It's Minnesota or Tampa. It's going to be one of the two. You're either the 3rd seed in the wild card and you get the easier matchup in theory, at least by record, in Minnesota, or you get matched up with the Rays, who, let me just read off their injury report for anyone who is unaware. They're missing a lot of dudes. Jose Siri is out on the 10-day IL with a fractured hand. Luke Raley has a strained neck. He has no timetable for a return. Brandon Lau, fractured kneecap, 10-day IL. that feels like more than a 10-day injury. Shane Baz out for the year. Jeffrey Springs out for the year. Garrett Clevenger questionable for a return, likely not coming back anytime soon. Drew Rasmussen out for the year. Shane McClanahan out for the year. Like, this is a team that is riddled with injuries to some of their very best players. Wander Franco not with the team right now for unsavory, nasty stuff. Where are you at as far as who you want to see the Jays play? I know the conventional wisdom is the Trop is a house of horrors. You don't want to go there, but they've actually been pretty good in the Trop. They have Kevin Kiermaier, who might be, as our pal Zoobs pointed out on his show, Less Than Jays this week, like the secret amulet you bring into the Trop to ward off the Devil Rays magic. Where are you at with who you'd rather see, Minnesota or those dreaded Rays at the Trop?
Do I have to pick a side? Do I really
you have to pick a side. This is podcasting, Mike. You have to pick a side.
I'll tell you why I'm so reluctant to do so, because it's gonna come back and bite me in the ass, like it always.
Of course,
does.
that's the game we play.
Like when you look at I host Locked On Leafs regularly, and I know that after the Maple Leafs beat Tampa, there were chants in the streets, "We want Florida, we want Florida." And that turned out to not be the case. They did not want to see the smoke.
We're not saying we want Tampa necessarily. I don't think anyone.
You are.
Wants
it sounds
Tampa.
like you are. It really
I just think I prefer Tampa to Minnesota and their really good pitching staff. I don't know.
Yeah.
Sue me. Yeah.
You know what it is? Like I think that I have. It's going into the Trop is just not a fun thing. It really isn't for me. You look at the Twins, like that's not a great lineup. And I think that the Jays, they got pretty good stuff when it comes to pitching. So, if the Jays are going to struggle to put up runs, I'd rather do it against a team that's struggling to also put up runs and just let it be a real pitching duel every single night. And maybe, have it be close 3-2, 2-1, 4-2 ball games. And just hope that, your Jays batters just wake up in the way that they did last night and continue to do so throughout the weekend. So I think just based on that, the Twins have a less threatening lineup offensively. And I think that pitching wise, I think the Jays are pretty on par with them. Probably I would prefer to take on the Twins over the Rays.
Bring me the Rays. Just do it. Bring it. I think, look, people know I cover the Toronto Raptors. I have bad feelings about the city of Tampa because of the season the Raptors spent there getting booed by their own home fans, quote unquote. We know that the Trop has been a nightmare destination for the Blue Jays. Not this season, actually pretty good at the Trop this year, but it's been a nightmare spot. It's a grim place to watch a baseball game. I will not deny that. It just stinks. There's like very sad energy in that place at all times. There's many reasons to not want to go to the Trop for the playoffs. I think the injuries, not having to go up against Rasmussen or McClanahan or Springs or Baz, like that makes me feel pretty all right. And I just think, like, you mentioned the Leafs. They got over their demons against Tampa this year in the playoffs. Yeah, Florida's a whole other thing. Maybe just don't play sports in Florida. Maybe that's the answer here. But maybe it's time. Maybe it's time to avenge that decade-long Tampa curse against the city of Toronto, and have the Jays go in there. Again, there's no statistical bearing on this take. I just feel like bring on the Rays, man. I'm not scared of the Rays as it stands right now. Knock on wood, rub the rabbit's paw, et cetera, et cetera. But bring me the Rays. I think that's perfectly fine. I think the Jays can beat the Rays. They're better than the Rays right now, roster-wise, pitching-wise, everything. Bring it, Mike.
Basically, you want to slay the dragon to get to the king, right?
Yeah. Slay the dragon in the most depressing cave of all time. Yes.
Yeah.
That's gonna do it for us here, Mike. Oh, sorry. What you got?
No, we'll see. It's gonna be a fun, final weekend of the regular season. Fingers crossed that the Jays pull it off and don't absolutely melt an 18-wheeler off a cliff here. And then we could start teeing it up, and we'll see whether it's Minnesota or whether it's Tampa. If things go as planned, I think it would be Tampa. just based on if they win a couple of games and they're just going to end up with the first wild card slot, and that's where the second wild card slot rather, and that's kind of where it's going to end up being. So I'm excited for the weekend's game, so it should be a lot of fun. We'll see. Hopefully the Jays bats keep it rolling like they did last night.
If anything, I would just say, like, there's no need to entertain, like, any sort of last day of the season chicanery. Like, even if they've clinched their spot, you don't got to go try to, like, engineer a result to get who you want in the playoffs. That is how you piss off the baseball gods, being like, we want the Twins and we're going to lose to get them.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Just, roll into it and accept that the Rays are garbage and you're going to beat the Rays and just run them out of their sad, sad little building. Not even have to worry about the Game 3 thing we talked about because you just sweep them in 2. Wouldn't that be a swell outcome? We'll leave it there. Surely won't be feeling this confident once we get through the weekend because, that's the 2023 Blue Jays for you. But either way, feeling good today. Thanks so much for tuning in. Please subscribe, follow, rate, review, all that good stuff. Support the show and let us know. We're new at this too. Like, let us know if there's stuff you want us to have involved in the show in the next little while as we take you through the end of the postseason. But for now, you can follow Mike at Mickey_Canuck. You can follow me at Woodley Sean, and you can go find the show wherever you get your pods to support it and tell your friends as well. With that, we'll talk to you on Monday. Another episode of Locked On Blue Jays. Thanks for hanging. Bye-bye.